All right. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to my both Garys who are here today. My name is Christina, and I am the Education and Special Events Coordinator here at the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. And due to the pandemic that we're in, we've decided to take our programming to a little bit of a different route. So we're doing a lot of video interviews, and we're very fortunate to work with our Hall of Famers and our sport heroes around this province to be able to do this. So I want to thank both Garys, Gary Sabean and Gary Walsh, for coming on here today. And I'll give a little brief intro of both of them. So with us here today, Gary Sabean, he is our Hall of Famer. And Gary has his 5th degree black belt and achieved his Sheehan level Chitoi Ryu instructor's designation in 2013. He's had the privilege of representing Canada internationally for over 12 years. He is a 9-time Canadian I'm going to say that wrong. Kumite? Did I say that right? Kumite champion, winning 7 of those consecutively. In 2001, he was the 2001 World Chitoi Ryu Karate Champion for sparring, the 2004 World Chitoi Ryu Grand Champion for both kata and
Kumite.
I don't know why I can't say that. Gary was also awarded the National Athlete of the Year and the National Coach of the Year twice. He was inducted into the Nova Scotia Karate Hall of Fame in 2011 and our Sport Hall of Fame, the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame, in 2010. Thank you so much for being here today, Gary. And when I put this on, it's going to be your birthday. So I want to say happy birthday to you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Our other Gary who we have with us here today, we have Gary Walsh. And sorry, I have a little intro here. I invited Gary Walsh onto this conversation because he had a lot to do with the induction of Gary Sabean. So Gary Walsh is the Karate Nova Scotia past president. He's a Karate Canada board director and a chartered professional coach. And Gary, like I said, I understand he had a lot to do with the nomination and induction of Gary Sabean. So thank you again for joining us here today. We're going to have a brief chat with both of you. And I'll start with Gary Walsh so I can get a little background of Gary Sabean. So first and foremost, can you touch on the topic of your involvement with the induction of Gary Sabean?
Well, yes, a number of people were contacted, not just throughout the province, but nationwide, because Gary's been known on all fronts, but we more on the local front. And actually more than me is my wife, Eileen, because she was Gary's actually first senpai, which is a senior student instructor in the dojo when Gary was training when he was extremely young. And so what we were doing is putting together a nice profile, which began, of course, down this way, down the valley and the French Shore. And then, of course, the rest of the input came from the provincial organization, Karate Nova Scotia, and Karate Canada. So that's how it was. And we put together some stories, some photos, and just brought everything up to par as to what brought Gary to where he was in 2010.
Well, there's no doubt that obviously there were lots of accomplishments, and I'm sure it wasn't a hard note for the selection committee here to put him in. So I can see why you would nominate him. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that Gary has made on the sport of karate here in Nova Scotia?
Sure. So Gary was not only a great competitor, and in fact, an interesting point was Gary was a brown belt, which is the one just before Shodan or black belt, for a good number of years, long time. And he just loved competing, wasn't that interested in grading. That didn't matter much to him. He just wanted to compete. So as a result, instead of going to black belt, he stayed at brown belt for a little while, and it sort of put a hesitation on everybody else in the province. They didn't want to move up into his category because it was like committing competition suicide, right?
Okay.
Let's wait till Gary moves on. So that was kind of cool. There was a bit of a stalemate for a few years when Gary was a brown belt. You remember those days, Gary? Anyway,
Kind of.
as far as the impact, it's really twofold. It's great when the kids that were growing up and being introduced to karate, would go to tournaments and see competitors like Gary compete, because he was extremely fast and did all the moves that we did in the dojo, you know, and extremely well. And he made quite an impression on the kids. And even more important than that, he traveled around the province and headed up the junior karate program throughout Nova Scotia. So different dojos would bring him in, like in our dojo here in Annapolis Royal. We brought him in a number of times. He and one of his co-karateka, Dave Hunt, would travel around the province. And it was great because the kids would actually see him right here. And of course, when they go to tournaments, he'd like have I don't know, a couple dozen of them follow him around all over the place. So Gary had an atmosphere around him like that he was like a stick of Velcro. You know, once you got around him, you pretty much stuck with him. But it was interesting. And Gary would do the things in the clinics for the kids that would really, really spark their interest, make them laugh, make them have fun. And I can remember one time when he was here at our dojo, what he did, we have these kicking pads. There's different types, but there's a type that you hold in your hand, and it's a flat pad. So Gary would get the tallest kid to hold it above his head. And Gary, of course, would do a flashy kick, jump, and kick this thing, and it'd go flying, and the kids would all cheer. And anyway, Gary come in, and anyway, this time what he did is he said he wanted the tallest kid to hold it. He held it up. He said, "No, that's not high enough. I want somebody else." So of course, all the hands went up. So Gary selected another one, and he said, he went to grab the paddle from another kid. He said, no. He said, "I want you to get on his shoulders."
Oh.
He said, "You hold it." And he got up on the shoulders of the other kid, and Gary went up and did that. So, I mean,
Wow.
it didn't just impress the kids, right? So, and that's the way he's been. And if you run into him at a nationals, even to today, and you have somebody young that you want to introduce them to Gary talks to him as if it was in the middle of the street and nothing else was going on. He could have a competition, or one of his athletes could be up in a couple of minutes. So he's very focused into letting people know what the sport of karate is and the type of person he is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know that. I mean, myself personally, I don't know a whole lot about karate, but when I was reading kind of his accolades there as I was putting this together, even then I was learning a lot about all of the different levels that you can do and sort of where it is around the world and where he's competed. And I just thought that in itself was so amazing, especially being from this small province of Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And not even the small province, but he's from a very small town of Weymouth, you know, population. Very small population. Can you touch a little bit on that and how he kind of made his mark coming out of that small town?
Well, I guess he never let anybody forget where he was from. So that was very important. And he and his teammate, Mitchell German, made each other incredible. You know, if you don't have great competition, you never become great yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So Gary and Mitchell growing up in the Weymouth and Clare area, everybody knew them. Whether you went to karate tournaments or not, it was still in the newspaper. And then once they got on the provincial front and on the provincial team, they both moved to the city. They had their apartment there. Their living room wasn't like the average living room. All the furniture was up against the walls. The center of the living room was basically a combat zone. So anyway, and it's important that he lived that life regardless of where he was. So, you know, I don't care where you talk to anybody about Gary Sabean, it's always the same. You know, he's always the same person. He's the same person he is as he was a little taller than when I first met him as a teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I think that's great. And Gary obviously doesn't live in Nova Scotia anymore, but I was gonna touch on that a little bit to Gary Sabean, just kind of about what it was growing up in the small town of Weymouth, because here at the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame, we do run an education program where we travel the province and we give motivational talks and speeches to schools and youth groups around the province. And Gary Walsh has been very nice and has come with me on a couple of those. We have a good time together. But just for you, Sabean, was there anybody kind of along the way that had impacted you, a sport hero or a role model or somebody that helped you kind of get to where you are today with all of those accomplishments?
Well, in the beginning, I can't say it was difficult because we didn't know. I didn't know any better. Well, I still have so many people ask me, oh, what about soccer or
Hmm.
football or all these other sports? And I said, well, not in Weymouth. We don't have enough people. And literally, we didn't. I don't remember ever playing football or soccer. We could never get enough people together. So
Hmm.
I think for me, karate kind of filled that gap. It's an individual sport most of the time, but it's a team sport as well. So in the beginning, this is how it started. My best friend started karate, and his family, all of his brothers. So that's what inspired me to join. And I hated it with a passion. I couldn't stand it. Oh my goodness, my instructor, and I didn't want to be a wimp and quit because all my peers, my best friend, and all the people I looked up to were doing it. And so I kind of stuck it out. And 4 years later, or 5 years later, I'm the only one left out of that group.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of the reasons was competition. Even though I hated it, we are all expected to go to competition. So the first competition I went to, I did horribly. In kata, I did the wrong moves. It was terrible. It was the worst competition you could ever have. And I had the best time of my life. It was so much fun meeting all these people, all the different styles. It was just the best time I had ever had. And that's really what got me hooked. And then it was much later on meeting people. Like, I didn't realize that one of my best friend at the time, Mitchell German, I didn't realize that he would play such a big part as far as helping me progress.
Hmm.
But it was much later on where I had really big influences as far as competition. One of our instructors at the Atlantic Karate Club, Sensei Gascoigne, he was really my competitive coach, my fighting coach. So he had a really big impact. And being from a small town, it helped. I wasn't overwhelmed by a lot of the things that other people on the team, when I would go to nationals, they just seemed to be overwhelmed by some of the smaller things. And for me, it was just part of the game. So I think being from a small town, from a small province, a lot of people underestimate you, which is good too.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it didn't really negatively impact me at all that I can remember anyway.
That's good. Yeah. No, that's great. Do you have sort of a favorite memory, something that comes to mind from your sport growing up?
Um, oh, so many. I mean, there's so
I
many
bet.
great memories. I mean, yeah. I think one of the things that made me the proudest of being from Nova Scotia, being from a small town, all those things, I think probably the one I remember and I cherish the most is being the first competitor ever in Karate Canada history to win um, the most sportsmanlike award. So this is an award that's given, it's changed a little bit now, but then that award was given and nominated only by the referees and all the head coaches in the province. So these are your peers. Like, these are my peers. These aren't my competitors. They're not my
Hmm.
buddies. They're not my friends. These are people that are much older than me and that have been in martial arts for a long time. And they're making this choice with a lot of things to consider. And so the first time it was incredible. But when they announced it was the second time I had won, and I was the only athlete at that time that had won it twice. That really, I felt like everything that we did in Clare Karate Club and the Atlantic Karate Club in Halifax, and the progression all the way through, we were on the right path. We were doing the right thing when they made that selection. So that's probably the thing that I cherish the most about any of the awards or accolades. That for sure is the most important one to me.
That's really awesome. And also to just like you said, to know that it wasn't really about the gold medals or anything like that, sort of about those relationships and the friendships that you make when you're in the sport that really do make it special, you know, for kids growing up that do play sports. Now, kind of on the flip side of that, I know you got the sportsmanship award twice, but if there was one thing you could tell your younger self, what would that be?
I've been thinking about this question after,
Yeah.
and you know, I said to my wife last night, well, I wouldn't change anything. And she's like, well, that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear, you know.
She's right.
Yeah, 100%. And so things have been great. I've had wonderful, incredible relationships with a lot of people, not just in karate, going and doing my NCCP courses and all my coaching courses, being with other athletes from other sports and other coaches. It's been incredible. So if I did have to tell myself something, even though I wouldn't want to change anything, it would be believe in myself a bit more. There were lots of times where I would win fights, and my coach would be like, how on earth, like, this guy did this, and this. And then there were plenty of times where I lost fights because I knew my opponent's history, and they weren't necessarily better. Mm-hmm. So I think if I could say something to myself and all athletes out there, is believe in yourself more, because what you can achieve, there's no set goal. You can achieve a lot more. So
yeah, that's definitely a very important message, and I think that you're not the only one in Nova Scotia or any of those Hall of Famers that have probably said that to themselves. They do have that sort of small town feel and kind of think, you know, I'm just from Nova Scotia, I'm just this little kid that, you know, but it's people like you, and it's these heroes and these sport heroes from Nova Scotia and the Hall of Famers that hopefully kids now can say, you know, this person is from my hometown, and if they can do it, why can't I? So that's a really big message, and thank you for sharing that. Now, the last thing I have is just, I kind of want to know what you're up to now. I know you're still highly involved in the sport, so what's going on now in karate, and sort of where are you at?
Well, right now for me, it's what I do for a living now. So I have a full-time dojo, full-time karate club here in Calgary. I've had it for, I think, about 11 years now, 11 to 12 years. And so that, when my wife and I decided we were going to have children, it gave me the opportunity to switch from being an electrician, which it was something I enjoyed, to having the greatest job in the world. Mm-hmm. So I take care of my kids. So I take care of my 2 girls during the day, and then I teach karate at night. So it's an incredible balance. Again, talking about all the people that influenced me the most coming up through my karate career. One of them I feel compelled to talk about is James Stallard. He was a coach that I met later on in my career, and he was also my roommate at the time. So see how things work out, Mitch. Yeah, and he's the person that taught me that if the fight isn't with your opponent, or it's not the battle, the fight is within yourself. So the more you can control your emotions and the things that you can control, and forget about the things that you can't control in life, not just in competition, but in life. And that's why I feel compelled to talk about James, because that's what he taught me. So in competition, things I would say for me went quite well, and in my life too, because of that way of thinking. So, you know, karate allowed me to meet a lot of incredible people like Gary Walsh as well. And all these people influenced me in the most positive way. So it allowed me to surround myself with positive, really great people that, you know, that's why I am, and that's why I'm the person I am today. So I have a full-time karate club. I'm doing what I love, not just what I like.
Yeah.
I love being an electrician, but I love being a karate instructor. And I love even more being a dad at home, stay-at-home dad. So everything is great in my world.
That's awesome. That's really awesome to hear. And
yeah.
the give back too, right? I mean, that's sort of why you probably ended up coaching. You want to give back to the people that you knew and the things that you learned. And I think that's a huge part of it too. So congratulations on that. I think that's amazing. Of course, we miss you here in Nova Scotia. We wish you could have opened up your own school here, but you know, life goes on. You gotta do what you gotta do.
That's it. You never know.
Exactly. You never know. Life's still short.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of say thank you again. We're so lucky to have here in Nova Scotia, to have mentors and athletes like the two Garys here to celebrate the amazing people that we have to come out of Nova Scotia. And I just want to thank you both for being on the call today and for sharing your stories. It's hearing stories like these ones that inspire our youth from right here in Nova Scotia to go after their dreams, to set those big goals, and believe, just like you said, Gary, to believe in themselves that they can do it and that anything is possible, even from a small province like Nova Scotia. So thank you again very much. I am going to kind of wrap it up, but if there's anything else either of you would like to say to our youth here in Nova Scotia while I have you on the call?
Believe in yourself. Yeah, we can achieve great things, especially from Nova Scotia.
That's right.
And as far as the sport of karate and the art of karate, I think it's a great sport to get into because I found over the years, even as a coach, that if I have a soccer player or a wrestler or another sport athlete, if they've done or are doing karate as well, they're amazing. They do other sports so much better because of in the karate there's so much body awareness, so much coordination, and it's not the only sport like that. Gymnastics is very, very much the same, etc. You know, when you get kids like that in your other sport programs, they really take on to things because they know where every part of their anatomy is at any point in time. So they're very easy to coach. And with us, it's probably the only sport, one of the only sports out there that you can do your entire life.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
The older you get, the more important it is.
That's right. Yeah. And Gary, just while I have you here, do you know where kids can go and adults can go if they want to try it out? Because I think that's important too, is trying something out. Maybe you've never tried it before.
Any recreation department would have the information on the closest dojo. And like Gary said, that's the training center. And there are different styles all over the province and all over every province. So the recreation departments would know, or you could just, in Nova Scotia, for example, you just contact Karate Nova Scotia. Just Google it, and they'll let you know the closest dojo to you. The sport, when it comes to financing, is very inexpensive compared to many. Basically, you bring what you were born with and a little gi to cover it. So it's not too much that you need in the way of equipment. And that's probably the best way, is contact your local recreation department, or just Google Karate Nova Scotia or any of the other provinces, and they can easily set you up with a club in your area.
Perfect. And I'll put that information at the bottom of this post when I post this video, so everybody will have that information. Again, thank you very much, both of you, for coming on the call today. Gary, happy birthday again. Hope you have a great day. And we'll be talking to you guys soon. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure
meeting
Christina.
you.
Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you
Happy
too.
birthday,
Thanks
Gary.
again.
Thank you, Gary. Good to see you, bud.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.